All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. So this is another bird that we wanted to do this week that Amanda and I saw on our trip to Sedona, and this is a bird that we had seen previously when we were in Steamboat, and it was a bird. It was now one of Amanda's favorite birds,
Yes.
and I don't know. It was one of those things when we lived in Steamboat, we were not into birding, and since going back now, we're looking at everything around us and just like fell in love with this bird and then got to Sedona and immediately saw like a bunch of them there. So I don't know if they're the most exciting bird in the world, but we really like them. So we wanted to
Yes.
do an episode on them.
So, Amanda,
So yeah, we
what made you so attracted to them? Why did they become so?
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Yeah, so the first one we saw in Steamboat, I feel it did what I wish every bird would do for us. Like it just sat in one place for a long time and did a bunch of different vocalizations. So I was like, I felt like we had a connection to it. Like, and we were both like, thank you. Like for just sitting there and letting us look at you. And since then, yeah, I'm in love with these birds. And actually in Sedona, we had a lot of the same experiences. Like they must have been aware of us, but they did not care that we were there and just let us luxuriate in being in their presence and stuff. And so I love that they've made themselves accessible to us to really observe them. And then I think my favorite thing about them, I'll go with my favorite thing about their appearance is, they're pretty distinctive looking, easy to identify. I love their red eyes. And then my utmost favorite thing about them is their call. We had like tons
we
of funny experiences with their call.
we would wake up every morning and just turn on Merlin and go walk around. And where we stayed, there are a lot of like really pretty, like there are a lot of house finches. There are a lot of birds that we just thought were like really peaceful, and then all of a sudden we'd hear the towhee, and I'm gonna play it because it was so like jarring. Oops.
I always wonder how many people know that's a bird.
I know.
Oh, I know. Exactly, John. Yeah.
We thought it was like something in distress, or
Right. Yeah.
but it was so funny because it would totally break the noise of like all this peace. Like it was like this really pretty sound and very like serene, and then all of a sudden it's like and it's like everything else would hush after we heard it, and we would just turn and laugh.
Yes. It was such a funny sound, but so I love that about it. Yeah.
And did you hear him singing too?
No.
Not that we know of. It's funny you say that, John, because like now we went to listen to all their songs, and we were like, oh, these are boring compared to their call. Their call is so distinctive,
So they have, when I first got into birds, they were mixed with something together with the eastern towhee into something called rufous-sided towhee. So they've had kind of an interesting, fairly recent taxonomic history of splitting and of people trying to interpret what contact zones mean with respect to whether something's a species or not. So the American Ornithological Society decided to split them into two species. The eastern one is called eastern, but then the western one is called spotted, and it's called that because it has little white spots on its wings that the eastern one doesn't have. Although I imagine the hybrids have varying kinds of spots. I forgot to look at pictures of hybrids because they do that, unfortunately, for the taxonomists. They
And the spotted look way cooler. We were looking at the eastern, and we totally favor the spotted.
except
Prefer
the
the spotted,
eastern
yeah.
one's song is better, in my opinion.
Oh,
Oh,
Which-
maybe
which
it's
is-
song, but what about its call?
Which is, yeah, they're both screechy. So
Oh, good.
neither one of
I
them
like
is
that.
winning beauty contests for their
So what I like about them is I would actually say they've been really important in helping biologists or ornithologists think about how you define species. In part, we think of them as a U.S. bird, but they also go down and have an extensive range across the border all the way down into around Mexico City and even further south.
Oh, wow.
And in those areas, ornithologists have been looking at the various places where the different taxa come together, and they do different things in different places in the different areas of contact. And so I think that was a really eye-opening thing back in the probably 60s and 70s when people started showing that was what was going on between these two things that at the time were called one species.
Wow.
So the eastern one, if you listen to its song, says "drink your tea," but the western one has missed the your part. So it kind of has the beginning and then the end, but it's missing. It's not as distinctive. So given that I love tea, I
very
like
cool.
the eastern one song better. There you go.
It's your
My
perfect
qualification.
song. Yes.
for-
Wait, so is the spotted then just drink tea, not drink your tea?
Yeah, but it doesn't sound the same. The drink your tea
Okay,
is pretty
okay.
distinctive for the eastern one.
Wow.
But if you miss the
Okay.
middle syllable, you don't kind of get the whole thing. So
I gotcha.
message.
I feel like
Yeah.
when I go back to
Yeah.
Arizona, it's one of those sounds where the first time I hear it, it doesn't register as what it is, and then it like takes me a few seconds to kind of go, oh, wait a minute, that's a spotted towhee and not an eastern towhee.
Uh,
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
so
So
are,
are there eastern towies around us in Chicago?
There are, although one of the things that I'm fascinated by is that they recently put out a 2025 assessment of bird trends for U.S. birds. And one of the birds that they were saying was actually going down in a way that they were concerned about was eastern towhee, which is kind of surprising because
Oh,
I feel like in the spring you can go out into almost any forest preserve and they like the understory. So just like, you guys had them in the chaparral around Sedona, they're in the understory of eastern deciduous forest and in the eastern towhees. And so, I feel like you can get them on migration too. So first week of May, when we do the spring count in Illinois, we'll often be down at around the museum, and we'll have them in the shrubs around the museum and Northerly Island too, just on migration.
given that you like their names, their calls so much, the genus has 5 species in it, and it's called Pipolo, and the genus name in New Latin means to chirp. So there you go.
oh,
I like that.
Common characteristic of the whole genus is to screech.
and I saw something that said that early in breeding season, the male spotted towhees spend their mornings singing their hearts out, trying to attract a mate. The male towhees have been recorded spending 70 to 90% of their mornings singing.
Oh my
And then
God.
almost as soon as they attract their mate, their attention shifts to other things, and they only spend 5% of their time singing.
You just let
They make
themselves go.
They got what they wanted, and no more singing.
I mean, it could be that they're actually working really hard at that point.
No, because I think
Yeah.
females build nests. I don't think males build nests, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm with Shannon on
Anyway.
this. I'm just kidding. They're just sitting around doing nothing. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
recovering.
Yeah, I sang my whole
Okay.
heart out.
What,
for
what, what
you.
they're doing is not drawing attention to the fact that the pair is there.
That's true.
There we go. Yeah, yeah.
I'll give you that. Yeah. I'm just kidding.
So in our collections, if you were to look up, what we have, it would all be under the rufous-sided towhee's name back then, Erythrocephalus and Erythrothalmus. I'm sorry. And we have almost 2,000 of them all mixed up
Oh, wow.
like that.
Wow. And then they're a type of
They're a
sparrow?
type of sparrow.
They are a big one.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
You know, and they're a kind of a fascinating example of the subspecies concept too, because even though
Good Lord.
even though
Yeah. There's no concept for this. It's just a big freaking mess. That's what it is.
yeah, well, there are 21 subspecies just within what's called spotted towhee now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, think about that. That's insane.
That is insane. Wait, 21
Subspecies.
subspecies of spotted towhee?
Yeah, that doesn't even include
the
whatever's
heck?
going on in the eastern one.
And I was
It's insane.
my-
I always like to
gosh.
point out that what that's telling you. So a lot of those are not a lot, not all, but a lot of them are in Mexico. But
Okay.
you know, it gets out onto the islands off the coast of California, and so I think what it tells you is that there's a lot of microgeographic variation, and that's kind of interesting with respect to what those birds do relative to other birds, where you can look across a broad mourning dove, for instance, across that entire area wouldn't have any geographic variation.
Right. Right. Wow, that is crazy. So did those 21 subspecies look different, or would it be you'd have to do like their DNA to know that they're
There no
different?
way are they different like that. There's no way there's that many.
Well, but they were all they were
Okay.
no, but
genetically distinct things.
so they were all
no way.
they were all
Okay.
defined based on morphological characters, though. So people would put them side by
With
side.
insufficient sampling.
In some cases, yes. But there are
crazy.
some
So you guys, are you saying there's not 21?
I am
Like-
yes, I'm saying there is not.
Okay.
Go read the descriptions of them. It'll make your head spin as you try to possibly imagine what these things, how much of a paler versus not paler thing you're trying to
we need
decide is
we need to have
distinguishable.
you. We'll have you guys into the museum, and we'll spend a day just looking at spotted towhees. And you'll be able to see that they'll be sorted out by geography in the collection and by those subspecies names.
No, you'll run from
And
the
will we be able to
museum
tell anything?
No, you'll run from the
Yeah.
museum screaming because we'll give you the book that has the written descriptions of the subspecies, and you can stand at the tray, almost 2,000 of them, and you can see if you can figure out whether things are discretely different or not.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say it'll make you'll have a headache.
No, you're gonna
By the
you're
end-
gonna
by
you're
the
gonna
end
you're
of
gonna
that.
come out of there going, wow, that geographic variation is great. We got to go to Oaxaca and see those spotted towhees in Oaxaca.
You'll
Yeah,
be
now we've
you'll be
seen-
coming
We've
out.
seen the
No, you'll be coming out saying, "What's the matter with ornithologists?"
we're gonna say we've seen the Steamboat one, we've seen the Sedona one, and now we have 19 more.
There you go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Subspecies.
Think about where that'll get you. It'll get you all to these volcanoes
Right.
across Mexico, and it just, yeah, no.
That sounds pretty
does.
good.
Oh,
That's I was wondering the how the spotted towhee has those white spots on its wing versus the eastern towhee. Do those white spots serve any camouflage purpose, or do they do anything that is apt to the west?
So that's a great question.
My guess is that that's morphological drift, right? A mutation happened that made a few more the few more spots bigger and whiter because they're really white actually, and it documents the fact that for sometimes they haven't exchanged a whole lot of genes, so they're evolving separately from the eastern one, and that distinguishing feature are those little spots. Just like most species have distinguishing features of some sort. This is what I was getting to before. They don't all have adaptive significance. Just mutations happen, and then you get genetic drift, and sometimes you can get selection after that happens. But
And in this particular example, one of the things I don't think is completely worked out is it's conceivable that the question from an evolutionary standpoint should be framed the other direction, which is why did the eastern towhee lose its spots?
Interesting.
Those aren't all that tractable questions to come up with solid answers for most of the time.
And sometimes in the hybrid places, you can get greenbacks. So there's a lot of phenotypic variation that can happen in these towhees. So when they interbreed with collared towhee, some of those populations have greenbacks.
So that's a Mexican species that's different and yet comes in contact with the spotted towhees as they go south and they hybridize.
There's lots of idiosyncrasies, and I think that's probably why it's reflected in the fact that there's 21 subspecies, is that there's lots of room for minor bits of variation, and its meaning is not clear to me.
I don't know if so we were talking about eye color, and spotted towhees, to my knowledge, all have red eyes. And
spotted, but not eastern.
Not eastern, right? Exactly, which is
okay.
interesting. So erythrophthalmus is Latin for red eye.
Red-eyed,
which is certainly what the first birds that somebody would have seen would have had.
And their eyes are just incredible. That was like the first time we saw them and we're up close with binoculars, really what drew us to them. Like, I feel like it looks like it's filled with like paint or something. Like it's so
those are blood
bright
vessels.
red.
Those are
wow.
that's blood in the blood vessels of the eyes. So there can be pigments, carotenoid pigments. Those are the red kinds of pigments in eyes, but very few birds actually have carotenoids in their eyes. You can get colors from different kinds of things. Purines, for example, things like that can produce color, but most red is from blood vessels. So bird, when you look at bird, if you look at human eyes, you see the little white part around the pupil, but that's not, birds don't have the white part, the sclera. So they have a muscular ring, and those things, then you get the blood vessels that you can see behind the eyes. So that's what's making the red. Now, does that have adaptive significance? I don't know. I don't. A lot of people, there's a lot of myths online. I found this hilarious too about the meaning of that, the spiritual meaning of the red eyes. And I don't know that has any meaning at all. It just happened, and I don't think they use it to attract mates. There can be ideas about the quality of a mate based on how intense a red can be, but that's usually in pigments. I don't know if that goes to eye color. There's all these hypotheses about whether or not you're signaling your true value as a mate by the intensity of your color. Like you have fewer parasites, you're more fit as a potential mate, those kinds of things. I don't know if eye color made that way is
well, especially if you're
think they signal
if you're singing for 90% of the morning or something.
Your eyes
shouldn't matter.
Bloodshot.
To me, that's what
you popped all the blood vessels in your eyes at that point.
So Shannon, do other birds then have either larger pupils that cover the red or have a pigment in them, and that's why we don't see the red? If you're saying that they don't have the white that like we have as humans, or
they don't have the blood vessels in the black of their eyes the way all birds don't have that proliferation of blood vessels in the back of their eyes. But usually if you have red eyes, that's what it comes from.
I'd say the most common.
And you can get really weird things happening with colored pigmenty things over reflective surfaces. And if you look at pictures of the color distribution across eyes, it is wild. the kinds of iridescent greens and blues and shiny reds and oranges and yellows. It's amazing. And some of those, or maybe most of those, are dictated by some kind of a pigment on top of a reflective surface that make those really brilliant colors.
But I think that the point of like, what do the birds get out of having red eyes is a really interesting one that I don't think people have fully figured out. So Cooper's hawks have red eyes as adults.
Okay.
I mean, I say we don't even know exactly genomically how they make those eyes like that. So that's part of what we, first off, you have to describe all the ways you can make colors in your eyes. Then you have to understand something about how the eye color gets made genomically. And then you have to understand what they use it for. What are the varying eye colors used for, which requires behavioral analyses, things like that. So there's virtually nothing we know about eye color in that way, except a little bit now about the kinds of pigments that are in eyes and the distribution of pigments. A graduate student at LSU did this really nice review paper. His name is Eamon Corbett, and he did a really nice review paper published in the IBIS that is about bird eyes, eye colors. And he has some amazing figures, as you could imagine, in this paper where you can really see the diversity of eyes of birds. And, one of the things that eBird has been super important for is doing studies like this, because birds' eye color fades when they die. So you can't use specimens to see the eye color. Eventually, we can maybe use specimens to understand how the color gets made, but you can't see the color itself. And the pictures that you can see on eBird have enabled such a review to actually happen. And the data that are on tags is pretty generic. Eye blue, eye brown, eye black. Most songbirds have dark eyes, brown or black.
I think spotted towhees are just trying to intimidate other species.
Oh, for real?
Why not? I can't come up with anything else.
That screeching would be more useful at getting people away from it.
They can be intimidating, those eyes.
I mean, I think that's a really important thing, that not every characteristic is adaptive. As humans, we're a whole pile of things that are not adapted to our environment. We are not adapted. Our backs are not adapted for upright walking, which is why people have so many back problems. So you're always a mix of your evolutionary past, and you're never a perfect adaptation. Besides, even if you were, then the environment would change and you wouldn't be. So things vary at different rates, but you're a primate, and so you're going to have a whole bunch of things that are primate-like. And things we think of as humans didn't all evolve after humans and chimps split off from each other, and that includes opposable thumbs and all kinds of things that don't really document or diagnose humans. Once you start looking at the evolutionary tree of life for primates, you can see where along that tree certain things evolved. And they can get modified and enhanced or changed through time, but they didn't all evolve after chimps and humans split. That includes intelligence and brain size. Certainly humans have taken that, but other primates have pretty big brains with lots of neurons in them.
So what I want to know is whether anybody's ever looked at spotted towhee territories in relation to other birds, and whether or not they're able to scare other birds away from overlapping on their territories or not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you get right on that. That's a solo endeavor, John Bates. You can see if you can convince one of the graduate students to go with you.
I did see a note that it said during conflicts between two towhees, you may see one bird pick up a piece of twig, bark, or leaf and carry it around as an indication of submission.
Oh,
So if
not
one
like a
towhee,
club to show the other one that you're
I guess
curious?
not.
What you're saying is it's not shutting its eyes so that they're no longer red.
True.
I mean, I'm really curious about what mutations happen to have some of the populations in the eastern towhee that have kind of whitish, yellowish kind of eyes. To me, that's a really interesting question. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's another genomic study that needs to be done to look at how the genomes are different between these birds. What might have been turned on or off to make them lose, to lose that. So is it something added or taken away that exposes or doesn't expose the red parts, the blood vessels? I have no idea, but it's, now that we know that pattern and we have the tools genomically, we could do that.
That's the population.
Do we have any white ones?
Sure. That's a population down in Florida.
So we
it's,
could do that. Except we don't really even know so much about what genes contribute eye color to birds. It's actually a more complicated project than it sounds, because it's not as simple unless it's, one mutation that turns off an amino acid in a protein. That we could probably find, but there's going to be a lot of variation across the genome that is signaling eye color. It won't be nothing's ever as easy as simple as you think it's going to be.
Well, for instance, in humans, I think there are 9 genes associated with determining eye color that they know of.
Yeah. So it's not as easy as one gene with recessive and dominant traits, with blue being recessive and brown being alleles being dominant. It's nowhere near that simple, even in humans, let alone in birds where you have so many different kinds of eyes, colors, shapes, pupil sizes, pupil shapes. There's lots of variation that, it's documented kind of, but we don't know why.
Can you preserve birds' eyes? Like, is there a way to pickle them, or how would you conduct a study like that?
So,
one
of the challenges is you need really fresh material. But then, as Shannon's saying, if you can get into the actual genes, you can begin to tease apart what's coding for what.
So, the question is, what is being expressed in the red eyes versus the white eyes, for example? And for that, you need fresh eyes that you can do RNA studies or protein studies from to see, on top of the DNA studies that might tell you, because, the genes don't just directly get turned into features. There's a lot of gene interactions, protein interactions, mutations that might turn on and off genes that aren't in the genes themselves, but that control the way the gene functions. So there's lots of things that could cause these, but it would be really interesting to know.
I think we're getting kind of close. Maybe we can start to wrap it up.
Sure. Oh, there's
and RJ, do you think we covered our mailbag, or should we?
Yeah. So maybe I'll give her, unless there's anything more that we want to talk about the eyes. Maybe I'll just give her a little shout out.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's my fault. I set my phone down on the mouse and it stopped recording. And now we're going again. So.
All right.
Sorry about that.
No, it's the cascade effect.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, no. So Shannon,
I want everybody who goes out to look at towhees to watch how they look for food. So, sparrows do eat seeds and plant material, but they also will eat insects. And I find them really charming because they do something called a double scratch motion. So they use both of their feet to dig or lift up the whatever's on the ground, leaves or plant material. And I love that about them. Yes. So go take a look at them when they're feeding, and you can see them kicking up the ground with both of their feet. It's adorable.
The other bird that does that we should talk about sometime is fox sparrow, because they're really interesting. But when you're out bird watching, a lot of times I'll be able to tell that it's going to be a towhee or a fox sparrow, just because you can see the way the bird is moving on the forest floor and kicking stuff up.
That's so cool.
Awesome.
I totally
Yeah.
saw the description of what they were doing and was trying to picture it in my head and couldn't, but I've seen fox sparrows do that before. And so now that you
Yes.
say that,
Yeah.
John, that's super helpful. Yeah,
Yes.
cool. That's
There
one
you
way
go.
we've
That's your
like,
challenge the next time you
That's
see them.
awesome.
And both of the eastern and the western ones do that. So
That's so cool. I was going to say another thing that makes this one of my favorites is there's seems to be like 800 million sparrows, and this is the only one I could definitively identify. So
what
that's
if it didn't have red eyes, Amanda?
Oh
What
man,
happened?
I'd be I'd be in trouble.
Got to see that iris.
That's right.
so we did have a mailbag question, but I think we covered it. So this was from Rachel M from Chicago, and Rachel said, I saw that you're doing an episode on spotted towhee. I think their red eyes look really crazy with how red they are. Do they use these as defense? What could be the reason for those red eyes? Do other birds have eyes that red? So I think we covered a lot of that.
Yeah.
So thank you for the question, Rachel, and thanks for
Yeah,
listening.
great question.
Yeah.
It's a really important scientific mystery that Rachel should stay tuned for more answers
Yeah.
on. I'm completely fascinated with the idea of figuring some of these genomic mechanisms out. And then, all the studies that'll come afterward to figure out how these eye colors are used or what they're signaling with eye colors. So
So cool.
it's cool. And one of the most famous ornithologists, Charles Sibley, the one who pioneered DNA samples, his dissertation research in the 50s was done on towhees. So he
Oh,
was like one
cool.
of the OG towhee people.
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
awesome. Respect.
Yeah.
I'll leave you with one thing, which is if you like towhees, keep your cats inside, because in residential areas, cats are one of the biggest predators of towhees, taking babies. They nest fairly close to the ground, and cats are a major predator. When you're not in environments, snakes can be a problem when you're not in residential areas. But in residential areas, it's cats. Keep your cats inside. It'll keep them healthier, happier, and less of a bird killer. Please keep your cats inside.